We're live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Coming up in the next hour. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar in South Korea co-chairs the 10th India-South Korea Joint Commission meeting with his counterpart Cho Tae-yul. Voters in 15 U.S. states and one territory cast their ballots on Super Tuesday. U.S. President Joe Biden and Donald Trump get early wins, inching closer to a November rematch. USA's Gaza ceasefire deal in exchange for a release of Israeli hostages in Hamas' hands. Talks on ending Israel-Lebanon border fighting to begin in Ramadan. And in tennis, Romania's former world number one Simona Halep wins doping appeal. The Court of Arbitration reduces 4-year doping ban to 9 months. On to the top story this hour. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is in South Korea on the first leg of his 4-day visit to South Korea and Japan. The 10th India-Korea Joint Commission meeting is being held in Seoul today. At the meeting, which is co-chaired by External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and his Korean counterpart Cho Tae-yul, Dr. Jaishankar pitched for expanding cooperation in areas of critical and emerging technologies, semiconductors, green hydrogen, human resource mobility, nuclear cooperation, supply chain resilience. He also called for deepening cooperation in the Indo-Pacific.
During our Prime Minister's visit in 2015, our relations were elevated to a special strategic partnership. It is important that we live up to that. We have grown from strength to strength in the years that have passed. We have become truly important partners for each other. And our bilateral exchanges, trade, investments, defense and S&T cooperation have all seen a steady growth. While keeping up the momentum in the traditional areas of cooperation, we would be very much interested now in expanding it to new areas such as critical and emerging technologies, semiconductors, green hydrogen, human resource mobility, nuclear cooperation, supply chain resilience, etc., to make our ties more contemporary. Excellency, we have also noted the growing convergence of our views in the international fora. Your focus on the Indo-Pacific region is a good case to point, and we both have stakes in its stability, security and prosperity.
Well, after concluding his visit to South Korea, Dr. S. Jaishankar will travel to Japan from 6th to 8th of March for the 16th India-Japan Foreign Ministers Strategic Dialogue. DD India's Chris Gilbert reports for more from Tokyo.
This evening, Japan time, so late afternoon India time, is going to be the beginning or the launch of the first ever Raisina Roundtable, and this is a talk or a meeting to promote, I guess, back channels or what is called Track 2 dialogue between the two countries. It will be attended by the minister, but also by think tanks, lobbyists, and academics here in Japan, and it's going to be largely focused on the Quad partnership that these two countries share with Australia and the US, but also other geoeconomic and geopolitical issues as well. That is going to be continuing into Thursday. There also to look forward to is the 10th dialogue between Minister Jaishankar and his counterpart here in Tokyo, Yoko Kamikawa. Again, it's a very similar theme to South Korea, with India looking, first of all, complementing both countries on the platform that they have laid through investment and through defense cooperation, joint military exercises, multilateral military exercises, and now looking for new avenues to expand upon that foundation. And that is what Dr. S. Jaishankar has referred it to, expanding on the foundational platform that these countries have built already in terms of economic cooperation, military cooperation, response to climate change. As they say, it's going to be the full gamut of issues that these two parties are going to discuss here in Tokyo.
And moving on to Super Tuesday primary in U.S. after millions of Americans across 15 states and one territory cast their ballots on the biggest voting day of the primary season, President Biden and Trump have secured early wins of their respective parties. Former President Donald Trump won the Republican votes in a dozen states, including delegate-rich California and Texas, brushing aside former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, his lone remaining rival. Polls have closed in Vermont and Virginia as ballot counting begins on key U.S. election day, Super Tuesday. With early victories, the election in November is already almost certain to be a rematch between Trump and President Joe Biden.
This was an amazing night, an amazing day. It's been an incredible period of time in our country's history. It's been sad in so many ways, but I think it's going to be inspiring because we're going to do something that, frankly, nobody's been able to do for a long time.
And on the other hand, U.S. President Joe Biden easily won in Iowa and Virginia, according to the projections. While talking to the reporters, Biden said that he had won his last 5 polls ahead of November presidential election.
The last 5 polls you guys don't report, I'm winning 5 in a row. You guys only look at the New York Times. They're a great paper.
And India correspondent Ira Spitzer joins us live from San Francisco for more. Well, Ira, though there was no shortage of people running for president in 2024, most of them labored under the shadow of the same 2 men who had faced off in 2020 also, President Biden and former President Trump, who are now certain to be the 2 opposing candidates. Where do you see this going?
Well, it's time for everyone to officially shift gears to look at this race, this rematch of the same candidates that ran 4 years ago. Yes, this has not really been in doubt for the last few weeks, but after Super Tuesday, it's basically official that this is going to be the candidates that we're going to see. And we saw this pivot immediately from former President Trump, who addressed his supporters at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida earlier, in which he sounded like a candidate who is now running in a general election, talking not about his Republican rival, Nikki Haley, but with his attention squarely focused on Joe Biden and on issues such as immigration and the economy, where that are probably going to end up deciding this presidential election. Joe Biden is going to have his chance to respond directly to the Super Tuesday results when he addresses the American people in a State of the Union address, which is happening in a couple days. So really now we are seeing the other candidates in the mix. We're going to see them most likely go away very soon, principally Nikki Haley, who of course was the only remaining real challenger to Trump. The election has been called, for example, here in California already, even though polls just closed in the last hour. But media outlets have already said that President Biden as well as Trump are going to win their respective primaries. So buckle up. It's going to be an interesting ride, a bumpy ride, and a ride that perhaps many Americans were hoping wouldn't happen. There has been some annoyance at the fact that we are running the same election again 4 years later. There's been concern about the ages of the candidates, but all that being said, it's going to be Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, very likely.
All right, Ira, as you said, a bumpy ride expected. But as election rematch looms now, much is at stake, from the future of reproductive rights to the chances of meaningful action on climate change to many more issues.
Right, exactly. You raise a good point that it's easy to forget about the major policy differences between President Biden and former President Trump because of simply the desire to contrast their personalities. And of course, there are some major differences in personality between these candidates and in their styles of addressing their supporters and reaching out to people across the aisle. But yes, in terms of foreign policy, in terms of immigration, in terms of the attitude towards climate change, major policy differences that will not only impact the United States, but will impact the rest of the world. We saw Trump, for instance, in his term, take a much more unilateral approach to trade policy, for example, an America First approach to trade policy. That's quite different than the more multilateral approach that President Biden has advocated for. And of course, climate change. Joe Biden has overseen perhaps the greatest push for efforts to try and address climate change in U.S. history, whereas President Trump has flirted with climate change denialism and has insulted things such as the Green New Deal and other climate-related efforts. So major differences that are going to play out over the course of this campaign.
All right. Thank you so much, Ira, for that update from there. And moving on, the National Electoral Commission of Venezuela announced that the presidential elections will be held on the 28th of July. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro celebrated the announcement of the date and expressed his enthusiasm for the presidential elections, but did not confirm whether he would seek a third term. Maduro's re-election to a 6-year term during the last presidential vote in 2018 has been criticized by the opposition in the United States and others as fraudulent. Meanwhile, the head of the National Electoral Council said that uncertainty remains over who will be the opposition coalition's candidate, with President Nicolas Maduro expected to seek another term. And in Peru, Prime Minister Alberto resigned on Tuesday following an audio recording claiming an official manipulated government contracts. Otarola said the recording was made in 2021 and was manipulated and edited as part of a conspiracy by his political opponents. Earlier, he denied committing any crimes after the recording was made public. As per the Peruvian law, other 18 cabinet members must now also resign along with Otarola's departure. President Dina Boluarte has the choice to reinstate each cabinet member or swap them out for a new minister.
Today, in a conversation with the President of the Republic, I informed of my decision to step down as Prime Minister for two reasons. First, to provide President Boluarte with the peace of mind to reshuffle the cabinet as she considers.
And as delegations held a third day of talks with no sign of a breakthrough in ceasefire between Hamas and mediators in Cairo on Tuesday, U.S. President Joe Biden said it was in the hands of Hamas now whether to accept a deal for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip in exchange for the release of Israeli hostages. Negotiators in Cairo trying to secure a 40-day ceasefire. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and Qatari Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani discussed a potential ceasefire in exchange for the release of hostages held in Gaza on Tuesday. Sullivan and Al Thani stressed that the deal will focus on release of sick, wounded, elderly and women hostages and agreed to stay in regular contact.
Hands of Hamas right now. The Israelis have been cooperating. There's an offer out there that's rational. We don't know what. We'll know in a couple days if it's going to happen. But we need the ceasefire. Well, there's got to be a ceasefire because Ramadan, if we get into a circumstance where this continues through Ramadan, Israel and Jerusalem again, it could be very, very dangerous. So we're trying hard for that ceasefire.
Meanwhile, the United States military released a video showing humanitarian aid airdrop into Gaza. The aid included 60 bundles of food supplies. The United States said that the operation was carried out in collaboration with Jordan. This comes as Israeli War Cabinet member Benny Gantz visited top U.S. officials in Washington. Gantz met with Vice President Kamala Harris, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. In a meeting with Blinken, Gantz discussed the delivery of aid and efforts to reach a ceasefire in Gaza between Israel and Hamas. Also, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel will allow a similar number of worshippers into Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in the first week of Ramadan as in previous years on Tuesday.
Israel's policy has always been and always will be to safeguard freedom of worship for all faiths. This is what we have also done during Ramadan, and this is what we will do now. We will do everything to safeguard freedom of worship on the Temple Mount, while appropriately taking into account security and safety needs, and will enable the Muslim public to mark the holiday.
Meanwhile, Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati said indirect talks between Lebanon and Israel will begin during the holy month of Ramadan, which starts next week.
The intel says there will be ceasefire in Gaza before Ramadan. On our matters, there will be negotiations during the month of Ramadan. There will be contact with Hochstein within the next 48 hours, either from President Berry or myself, to see where we are currently standing on this issue.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. As the conflict rages, Russia reports it repulses Ukrainian offensives. Ukraine says it hits Russian radars. State of emergency in Haiti amid gang violence. Nordic response. NATO drill begins in northern Finland. Swedish and Finnish troops take part.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. An update now on Russia-Ukraine conflict. Russia's defense ministry said that the Russian troops had beaten off Ukrainian offensives from multiple directions, including Avdiivka on Tuesday. The ministry added Russian troops destroyed tanks, missile launch systems, drone control points, and many other US-made weapons, along with the MiG-29 fighter jet. While the Ukrainian armed forces reported attacks on various Russian concentration areas of personnel and equipment, along with 76 combat engagements in the past 24 hours. It added Ukrainian forces launched attacks on multiple Russian personnel and military equipment concentration areas, ammunition depots, anti-aircraft missiles, and radars. Meanwhile, Ukraine's military intelligence agency said on Tuesday its sea drones hit and destroyed a Russian Black Sea Fleet patrol ship off the occupied Crimean Peninsula. The patrol ship is one of a series of Russian vessels that have been destroyed in recent months as Kyiv steps up its attacks against Russian targets deep behind the war's front lines. DD India's Megami Lim has more from Kyiv.
A Russian Black Sea Fleet patrol ship, Sergei Kotov, was hit during an overnight drone attack on Tuesday, according to Ukraine's military intelligence agency. The agency said the ship was located near the Kerch Strait, off occupied Crimea. The attack was reportedly carried out by a special unit of the intelligence agency called Group 13, using domestically produced Magura V5 naval drones. Train traffic on the Kerch Bridge linking Russia to Crimea was temporarily stopped overnight after explosions were reported in the area. The military intelligence agency said the patrol ship, which costs about $65 million, suffered damages to its stern on its left and right sides. Some Russian military bloggers confirmed the claim, saying there were attempts to tow the damaged ship to port, which ultimately sank. According to the agency's preliminary findings, 7 Russian sailors were killed and 6 injured as a result of the attack. A Ukrainian media outlet, Ukrainska Pravda, citing unnamed sources, reported that a Russian transport and combat helicopter was also destroyed along with the vessel. And Ukraine's military intelligence spokesman Andriy Yusov said Russian forces had planned to deploy anti-aircraft missile systems to the patrol ship. Now, Sergei Kotov is one of a series of Russian vessels that have been hit in recent months. On February 14th, the Russian landing ship Caesar Kunikov was sunk in the Black Sea after it was hit by Ukrainian naval drones. Megumi Lim in Kiev reporting for DD India.
Well, Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry landed in Puerto Rico on Tuesday amid escalating gang violence that has threatened to topple his government and left thousands homeless. Puerto Rico's governor's office confirmed Henry had landed in capital San Juan. It was unclear why Henry did not fly directly to Haiti, though heavy gunfire was heard near the capital's international airport on Monday. Haiti's already fragile security situation worsened over the weekend while Henry was in Kenya to tie up a deal for the deployment of foreign troops to restore order. Well, Haiti is facing one of its worst security crises in recent years. Gangs have taken control of the capital Port-au-Prince, while residents are fleeing the capital due to the growing violence. DD's Latin American correspondent, Marie-Trine Mina, has more details.
The state of emergency declared on Sunday in Haiti has not prevented an increase in violence. Armed gangs have attacked strategic locations such as the country's central bank and the airport. It's been reported that 80% of the capital Port-au-Prince is controlled by heavily armed civilians. The city is almost empty, with residents avoiding the streets. Last Saturday, gang members helped about 4,000 inmates escaped from 2 jails, some of them accused of serious crimes, such as murders and kidnappings. Haiti has faced several years of turmoil, and it has worsened since the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse in 2021. Since then, the Prime Minister, Ariel Henry, has been ruling the country, but he is widely unpopular. This surge in violence comes as the Prime Minister traveled to Kenya to bring a UN-backed mission to strengthen Haiti's police forces. The PM has attempted to return to his country from the United States, but flights have been canceled to and from Haiti, and there's no clear indication on when he'll return. He's not publicly commented on the violence. The UN has estimated that about 15,000 people had fled their homes, driven by the surging violence. The UN chief, Antonio Guterres, has called for an urgent action to end rampant insecurity. Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere and one of the poorest in the world. In Caracas, Marie-Trine Mina, reporting for DD India.
And Swedish and Finnish troops took part in a Nordic response NATO drill in northern Finland on Tuesday, with more than 20,000 of soldiers from over a dozen nations take part in 10 days drill exercise. Sweden, which is poised to join NATO possibly within days after gaining the final outstanding ratification last week. The purpose of the exercise is to strengthen the defense in the high north and reinforce troops in order to be capable of carrying out a defensive joint operation in Arctic conditions. About 90,000 troops are due to join the wider NATO exercises running through May. Also, Swedish Defence Minister Paul Johnson welcomed Hungary's NATO ratification and said it was a very positive development that Hungarian president had signed the bill that approved Sweden's accession to the NATO military alliance on Tuesday.
It is very positive, and hopefully we will now become members, and it will not be a matter of weeks but hopefully a matter of days. It will be good for Sweden, and it will be good for NATO. It will be good for stability in the entire Euro-Atlantic area that Sweden can become a full-fledged member of NATO.
And during a visit to Prague, French President Emmanuel Macron, alongside Czech Prime Minister Peter Fiala, signed an action plan for France's strategic partnership with the Czech Republic on Tuesday. Earlier, Macron stressed his support to finance the rapid purchase of hundreds of thousands of ammunition rounds from third countries to dispatch to Ukraine, announced by the Czech Republic last month. The plan was backed by Canada and Denmark and other countries also. And moving on, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and his Laotian counterpart Sonaksi Siphodoan signed a comprehensive partnership agreement on Wednesday on the sidelines of the ASEAN-Australia Special Summit in Melbourne. The agreement elevates the relationship to a comprehensive partnership which will become the foundation for collaboration on defence, environment, climate, clean energy, agriculture and education. Australia is hosting the three-day summit to mark 50 years since it became ASEAN's first external partner. Leaders will take part in a retreat later on Wednesday before the closing news conference. And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. After months of promoting their movies on red carpets, Hollywood stars gears up for the biggest night of movie industry, the Oscars, followed by a lavish dinner at the Ray Dolby Ballroom. The 2024 Governor's Ball prepares for the after-party with menu designed by world-renowned chefs and crew. The Oscars takes place in Los Angeles this Sunday. Nicolas Guesquere celebrated his 10th anniversary at Louis Vuitton with fashion show that drew crowds to a Louvre museum at nightfall in the last day of Paris Fashion Week. The fall collection resembled a 19th century French covered market in iron and glass with blinking tubes in the center. Designer Coco Chanel evokes the Deauville with boardwalk evoking the French seaside, parading tailored suits and long overcoats in the Paris Fashion Week. The fall session of world's biggest brand's runway show concludes this Tuesday. A defamation trial involving Polish film director Roman Polanski opened in Paris. Polanski is being sued for an defamation case in France. The 90-year-old director who lives in Paris did not show up for the hearing. David Beckham attends premiere of Guy Ritchie's new TV show, The Gentleman in London. The former England footballer posed for photos with Ray Winstone and shared a hug with Jason Statham at the premiere of the TV series. The Gentleman is due to hit streamlined platform Netflix from the 7th of March. And the El Nino weather pattern has begun to weaken but will continue to fuel above average temperatures across the globe, WMO said on Tuesday. El Nino is a natural occurring weather phenomena that causes warmer ocean surface temperatures in the eastern and central Pacific. There is a chance of La Nina weather pattern to get weaker after an unusually cold temperatures flow in the Pacific Ocean developing later in the year, although the reports also claims El Nino to provoke extreme weather such as wildfires, tropical cyclones and prolonged droughts. Well, heavy rain turned a local street in Wisconsin into a river. Flooding is one of the most common natural disasters in Wisconsin. The region has experienced a significant flood at least once every decade since 1880. The wet conditions are expected to last until the weekend. Moreover, over 100,000 people have been affected by the floods in the northwestern state of Brazil. The water level of the river Acre reached 58 feet on Tuesday. So far, 19 of the 22 municipalities are in an emergency due to the floods. Over 24 million of reais is assigned for regional humanitarian aid. Jordão has been the most affected by floods, where residents were forced to shelter while heavy rain continued to flood the surroundings. In Pakistan, at least 35 people have been killed and dozens injured during the last 5 days as heavy rains and snowfall cripples part of the country. Floods from record-breaking monsoon rains in Pakistan and glacial melt in the country's mountainous north affected over 33 million people, killing over 1,700 of its people. The havoc caused a disrupting of homes, roads, railways, bridges, livestock and crops, with damage estimated about $30 billion in 2022. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Prime Minister Modi launches projects worth several crores in Bengal, also inaugurates Kolkata and Agra metro projects. The first edition of the Naval Commanders Conference begins. INS Jatayu and Seahawk to be commissioned. And tension escalates between China and the Philippines. US supports Philippines following China's provocative actions in South China Sea.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibilities. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday 8 p.m. only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lepakshi Khurana, and time now for a quick recap of the headlines. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Shankar in South Korea co-chairs the 10th India-South Korea Joint Commission meeting with the counterpart Cho Tae-il. Voters in 15 U.S. states and one territory cast their ballots on Super Tuesday. U.S. President Joe Biden and Donald Trump get early wins, inching closer to a November rematch. U.S. says Gaza ceasefire deal in exchange for the release of Israeli hostages in Hamas hands. Talks in ending Israel-Lebanon border fighting to begin in Ramadan. And in details, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in West Bengal. Prime Minister Modi inaugurated and laid the foundation stones for various connectivity projects in West Bengal's Kolkata with a total value of 15,400 crore rupees. Prime Minister Modi also inaugurated India's first under-river metro tunnel in Kolkata. Later in the day, he will also unveil, dedicate and lay the foundation stones for multiple developmental initiatives worth approximately 12,800 crore rupees in Bihar's Bethia. And Indian President Draupadi Murmu confers Sangeet Natak Academy Awards for the years 2022 and 23 to 94 eminent artists in New Delhi on Wednesday. The awards are given in the fields of music, dance, drama, folk and tribal arts, puppetry and allied theatre and art forms. These honours not only symbolize the highest standard of excellence and achievement, but also recognize sustained individual work and contribution. And Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh embarked at sea on Tuesday to witness the Indian Navy's ability to conduct twin carrier operations. The demonstration was held as part of the first edition of Naval Commanders Conference, which is being held in hybrid form. During the inaugural session, both the aircraft carriers showcased their ability to safeguard India's maritime interest. The Chief of Defence Staff, along with the Chief of the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force, will also engage with the naval commanders over the next 2 days. They will explore avenues to enhance tri-service synergy and readiness in defence of the nation. And marking a pivotal moment in India's defence modernisation journey, Indian Navy to commission the newly inducted MH-60R Seahawk multi-role helicopter on 6th March at INS Garuda, Kochi. The Indian Navy is set to witness a significant surge in its maritime prowess with induction of the Seahawks. The helicopter has been rigorously tested in Indian reference atmosphere conditions and is fully integrated into the fleet. The MH-60R helicopter would enhance India's blue water capabilities, extending the operational reach of the Indian Navy and supporting sustained naval operations across spectrums and over vast maritime domains. Also, on the other hand, the Indian Navy swiftly responded to a drone strike on a Liberian-flagged commercial vessel in the Gulf of Aden on Tuesday. Indian Navy ship Kolkata promptly responded and rescued the Liberian vessel. INS Kolkata was deployed in the region for maritime security operations. This incident came amid concerns over the safety of commercial vessels in the Red Sea due to attacks by Houthi militants. Over the past few weeks, the Indian Navy has provided assistance to several merchant vessels in the Western Indian Ocean following such attacks. And for more on this, we have a correspondent, Nandita Dagar, with us. Well, Nandita, Indian Navy is continuously emerging in a leadership role in Indian Ocean region due to its increasing multidimensional capabilities. It will also commission the newly inducted MH-60R Seahawk multi-role helicopter and INS Jatayu today. Could you tell us more about this?
Yes, good morning, Lepakshi. What has happened is that this MH-60R Seahawk chopper will give the Navy sea legs, long sea legs, which means that this helicopter, with the provision of folding its wings as well as its rotors, can be carried on aircraft carriers, frigates, cruisers, destroyers. It's very easy for this chopper to embark on these surface vessels, and that is why the reach of the Indian Navy will increase, and that is why it is another step in the direction of Indian Navy becoming an even more blue water Navy. Secondly, you mentioned about INS Jatayu. Already the Lakshadweep Islands had a small detachment, the Dweep Rakshak, but now this small detachment in the southernmost island of Lakshadweep, the Minicoy, has been renamed, this naval detachment, as INS Jatayu. Again, this will serve as an outpost for Indian Navy in the Arabian Sea. India is very lucky and is very fortuitous to have islands such as Andaman and Nicobar in the Bay of Bengal. In the same way, these islands in the Bay of Bengal are just like a static aircraft carrier for the Indian Navy, and very, very apt and completely will help in India's operations, anti-piracy operations, as well as search and rescue, casualty evacuation operations in the Arabian Sea. As you know, Lepakshi, for the past 3 to 4 months, the Indian Navy has picked up a very high tempo of operations in the Arabian Sea and Gulf of Aden, following the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. There, the Houthis have actually targeted vessels, merchant vessels, and has carried out missile strikes on them. So also the piracy also has seen an upsurge, and that is why the Indian Navy's this newly commissioned base, the INS Jatayu, will help in the operations of the Indian Navy as per in Prime Minister Modi's directive or initiative of security and growth for all in the region. That is the Sagar initiative, and that is why this island serves as India's outpost and will give long sea legs to the Indian Navy.
All right. Also, Nandita, what else is planned for the first edition of Naval Commanders Conference, which began yesterday?
Yes, the Naval Commanders Conference, there will be several cross-deck operations on the 2 aircraft carriers, the Vikrant and the Vikramaditya. Vikrant, of course, was commissioned just last year by our Prime Minister. It's a huge symbolic, it's a symbol of Make in India or Atmanirbhar Bharat, India's self-reliance in matters of military. Anti-submarine warfare will be witnessed. There will be chopper operations. Garuda or the naval commandos will be showing their slithering from helicopters, carrying out search and rescue. So these kind of demos and drills, of course, will take place. And the Navy in its 3 days will mull over the future course of action that it is going to take over the next year. Of course, there is a blueprint made for the Navy's progress and its capacity building, capability augmentation for the next 20 years. But then in the next coming 1 year, what are the operational challenges? What are the administrative challenges? What is the global scenario? How it is changing the regional scenario? How the Navy will react to it? And this year has been earmarked as the Navy's year of the civilian. The Navy's welfare efforts for its personnel, civilians, they also will be be in full force in this commanders conference. Also, Lepakshi, this conference will also see a significant integration between how to boost integration between the Army, Air Force and the Navy to conduct joint operations. And jointmanship is one of the directives that has been given, set by Prime Minister Modi, and that is what the Chief of Defence, that is why the Chief of Defence Staff, General Anil Chauhan, is also there to witness these operations and to be a part of these brainstorming sessions. So
all right, integration of the three forces, a major point there. Thank you so much, Nandita, for that update. And now let's take a look at other stories making news today. A team of Election Commission of India officials led by Deputy Election Commissioner Hirdesh Kumar held a series of meetings to review the poll preparedness ahead of the general elections in India. The ECI team met with the Chief Secretary to the Government of Assam and representatives of various central enforcement agencies in a series of meetings held at Janata Bhavan in Dispur of India's Assam. The India Meteorological Department has forecasted a fresh spell of rainfall and snowfall over the western Himalayan region till Thursday and dry weather over most parts of the country during the next 5 days. The Met Department has also said hot and humid weather is likely to prevail over South India's Tamil Nadu and Kerala during the next 2 days. Mahashivratri celebrations begin at Isha Yoga Center in Indian state of Tamil Nadu. After the Mahashivratri Tamil Thembu, a 9-day cultural celebration will also held in the region. It showcases the depth and diversity of Tamil culture. It is an attempt to not only preserve but to revive the historic art forms, traditions and culture of Tamil Nadu. And moving on, the United States stands by the Philippines following provocative actions by China in the South China Sea, the U.S. State Department said on Tuesday. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said the United States stands with Philippine allies in the face of dangerous and unlawful actions after Manila's South China Sea Task Force said Philippine vessels were harassed and blocked by Chinese maritime militia and Coast Guard ships on Tuesday. And tensions escalated between China and the Philippines after the Philippines alleged that China's Coast Guard engaged in risky maneuvers, resulting in a collision between a Philippine Coast Guard ship and a Chinese vessel during a resupply mission for Philippine troops in the South China Sea. Did India's Neha Punia reports for more from there.
In the latest confrontation, the Philippines is saying that 4 of its crew members sustained minor injuries when 2 Chinese Coast Guard vessels collided with its vessels, water cannoned them, and that move, it says, shattered a windshield. The Philippines is maintaining that this vessel that was attacked along with one more that collided with a Chinese Coast Guard vessel was on a routine resupply mission when this confrontation took place. Remember, the Philippines has troops stationed on a grounded Navy vessel in the Spratly Islands. This is a contested region in the South China Sea, which both countries stake claim to. But China has, of course, denied those allegations of harassment and threats being issued through these moves. It says it was forced to take control measures after a Philippines vessel, quote-unquote, illegally intruded into disputed waters. It's also claiming that this vessel was not on a routine resupply mission, but was instead carrying construction and building materials to that disputed region, a charge the Philippines has denied.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. Google to restore delisted Indian apps on its platform Play Store. Ahead of the next general election, the British government to announce further tax cuts as part of the UK's spring budget. And UEFA Champions League beyond Munich marches into quarter-finals.
We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts. We demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lepakshi Khurana, and moving on, technology conglomerate Google has agreed to restore all the delisted Indian apps from its platform Play Store. India's IT minister informs the media after having a meeting with representatives from Google and the affected app developers over the issue. Google had recently delisted over 100 apps by prominent Indian tech companies over non-compliance issues. And Apple has encountered a significant downturn in iPhone sales during the initial weeks of 2024. Apple's stronghold on the Chinese smartphone market is showing signs of weakening, with iPhone sales plummeting 24% compared to the same period last year. This decline contrasts sharply with the local tech giant Huawei, with a 64% surge in sales, signaling a significant shift in consumer preferences in one of the world's largest markets. And DD India correspondent Laura Westbrook joins us from Hong Kong on this. Well, Laura, could you break down the numbers for us? What's driving this surge, in sales for Huawei, and what's dropping Apple's iPhone?
Yes, so I'm here in Hong Kong in one of the busy shopping districts. I'm actually standing outside an Apple store here. It's lunchtime, and there isn't that many people queuing for the lunchtime rush. That perhaps give you an indication of what's behind this report. It's a report by the research firm Counterpoint. It says, as you mentioned, that Apple's iPhone sales in China dropped by 24% in the first 6 weeks of 2024. Meanwhile, Huawei, one of the Chinese big companies, it saw its sales jump by 64% in its home market. Now, what's helping Huawei? Well, it released a new 5G smartphone in August, and that has proved pretty popular. So that's been helping its sales. Counterpoint, this research firm, it also said that Apple's share of the Chinese smartphone market dropped to 15.7%, taking it to 4th place. And it was 2nd place a year earlier. And taking that 2nd spot, well, that's Huawei.
Okay, thank you so much, Laura, for that information from there. And moving on, Britain's King Charles holds a meeting with Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt at Buckingham Palace on Tuesday ahead of the minister's budget statement to the UK Parliament. The King Charles is keeping up with his official state duties by having face-to-face meeting at Buckingham Palace with the minister. And the British government is poised to announce further tax cuts on Wednesday as part of the UK's spring budget. It's one option for a Conservative government looking to boost its popularity ahead of the next general election. But many economic institutions say they've already gone too far, slashing the taxes. Stuart Smith reports for more from London.
Last autumn, the government updated its spending plans. The Chancellor of the Exchequer made $25 billion of tax cuts for working people and businesses, which he hailed as a great way to reduce the cost of living and boost growth.
An autumn statement for a country that has turned a corner, an autumn statement for growth, which I commend to the House.
But it sparked a warning from the International Monetary Fund. The UN body said cutting taxes, while the UK already wrestles with underfunded services, was not a good idea. Other economists made similar warnings.
I think you can see why the UK government will be under pressure to cut taxes. It's increased them a lot since 2019. It looks like a record-breaking Parliament in terms of tax rises, and it's pushing the tax burden in the UK up to levels we've not seen here before. So tax cuts would be nice to have, and they certainly can help boost growth. The problem is that tax cuts generally involve you getting less revenue, even if they do boost growth, and therefore they will require spending cuts to pay for them.
The IMF warns that lost revenue would be better retained and spent on some of the UK's most cash-strapped institutions, like hospitals and schools. It also suggests that money could be put to good use investing in ailing infrastructure and the climate transition. But bearing the brunt of cuts over the last decade has been local councils, half of whom said last week they're on track to go bankrupt within 5 years without serious funding reform. A third say they'll cut funding to parks and leisure. Another third say they'll have to cut spending on arts and culture. What the Chancellor announces on Wednesday, though, may be moot. The government might only have months left in power.
The history of UK elections shows us that we certainly shouldn't be surprised if the first 12 months after election sees pretty big tax rises, and quite often tax rises that we didn't hear about in the winning party's manifesto.
But the opposition Labour Party has largely kept its options open for now as to how it would budget the economy, though it may have to avoid traps left by the outgoing government. Its campaign so far promises more investment and better funded public services, like the IMF recommends. But the question of specifically which taxes will pay for that isn't yet public. Stuart Smith in London, reporting for DD India.
All right, Tesla's Gigafactory in Germany has temporarily ceased operations until further notice after a suspected arson attack nearby left it without power. The attack southeast of the German capital set an electricity pylon close to the site ablaze, but the fire did not spread to the Tesla facility. It has, however, shuttered production at least until early next week. Police are investigating the possible arson attack in the area around the plant. The outage will cost Tesla estimated losses in the high hundreds of millions of euros, with 1,000 vehicles left unfinished on Tuesday alone. Reacting to the incident, Tesla CEO Elon Musk criticized the incident, suggesting that targeting an electric vehicle manufacturer was counterproductive to environmental goals. And Meta-owned social media platforms Facebook and Instagram were down for thousands of users on Tuesday in a global outage for hours. The social media giant shares went down by 1.5% in late morning trade, causing delay for about 3.19 billion daily active users across the globe. The disruptions started around 1500 GMT, with many users complaining of being booted out from the platform and were unable to log in. And time now for some sports updates. Former Wimbledon and French Open champion Simona Halep on Tuesday won doping appeal after the top court for global sport, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, cut short her 4-year doping ban to 9 months. A ruling that represents a major victory for the Romanian former world number 1. Halep has been provisionally suspended since October 2022 after testing positive for roxadustat, a banned drug that stimulates the production of red blood cells, at the US Open that year. An independent tribunal accepted Halep's argument that she had taken contaminated supplements, but said the volume she ingested could not have resulted in the concentration of roxadustat found in a positive sample. And in soccer, German club Bayern Munich on Tuesday marched into the quarter-finals of the UEFA Champions League after top scorer Harry Kane struck once in either half to steer the Germans to a 3-0 win over Lazio with an 3-1 aggregate victory, reigniting title hopes among their fans. Kane headed in for the lead in the 38th minute to cancel out the Lazio's first leg 1-0 advantage, and then tapped in their third goal on the rebound in the 66th minute after Thomas Müller first half stoppage time effort had made it to 2-0. The win provides instant relief for coach Thomas Tuchel and his team that had won just one of the last 5 matches in all competitions prior to Tuesday and are currently 10 points off the top in the Bundesliga. And RB Leipzig head coach Marco Rose said his side are convinced they can get past Real Madrid when they visit the Santiago Bernabeu for the second leg of the Champions League round of 16 on Wednesday. Real Madrid defeated Leipzig in the first leg to take 1-0 lead, and Rose is confident his side can put a good show against Ancelotti's men.
Well, if players say so, of course we are not only expecting it, but we are convinced about it and we believe so. Otherwise, we could come back home right now. Tomorrow we are going to believe in it. We are going to bed with joy and the conviction of getting an exceptional result tomorrow. We need an extraordinary performance and a bit of luck, but we need to work on it in order to achieve it. Everything is possible in football. In the first leg, we showed that we can play face-to-face against Real Madrid. We had our good chances. There were a couple of counter-attacks that we played well, but here we are. Tomorrow we are going to show what we are able to do, and we are convinced that we are going to be able to do so.
And Real Madrid manager Carlo Ancelotti is happy with his team's season so far, as the 64-year-old reflected on the personal burden that comes with being Real Madrid's manager and the struggle to handle the mental challenge facing the players and staff in such a competitive environment. Unbeaten in the Champions League as they resumed their bid for a record-extending 15th European Cup triumph, Ancelotti said he was thrilled with where his team stands despite injuries to key players like goalkeeper Thibaut Courtois, plus defenders David Alaba and Eder Militao with ACL tears, but added that it will be worth nothing if they do not close the season on a high. And Indian tennis ace Sumit Nagal went down to South Korea's Seong-chan-hong after putting up a spirited fight in the final qualifying round of Indian Wells Masters, losing 6-2, 2-6, 6-7 on Monday. Nagal brushed past the challenge of American wildcard Stephen Dostanek in straight sets in his first outing at the Indian Wells. Though Nagal may have lost, but the 26-year-old has assured himself of 10 ranking points and $14,400 prize money by making the final qualifying round. Nagal recently made history by becoming the first Indian men's single player in a decade to advance to the second round of the Australian Open. And ASEAN leaders get treated to a close encounter with Australia's iconic animal, the koala, as they arrive to Victorian Government House in Melbourne for the leaders' retreat on Wednesday. Leaders from the regional bloc were greeted by Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Victorian Governor before feeding and petting koalas. Australia's three-day summit ends on Wednesday. The country marks its 50th years since it became ASEAN's first external partner. All right, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Kurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.